All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. I'm Justin with the Holler. TNHoller.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. We also have all of these other hollers hollering across the state. That's thanks to your support. So I really do appreciate that. Your small dollar monthly donations keep us going. And as always, we want to send a special shout out to Lisa Parker for her support. If you're buying or selling a home here in Middle Tennessee, do it through her. That's a way to support us. Also, if you're doing it in Murray County, do it through Jessie Graham. She's a hero, and we want to support her. And then also Abby Rubenfeld, if you need a lawyer, very supportive of us. So if you are in a jam, Abby Rubenfeld is who to go to. Today, we are going to talk to a friend of ours who is running for Congress, who most of you probably know if you follow us. Senator Heidi Campbell is running for Congress in Tennessee's 5th District, which happens to be where I live. So we're going to get to that in a minute. I also want to let her know that we're going to play some videos of the guy that she's running against, Andy Ogles, and talk to her about that. Senator, how are you doing today? And, I should preface this by saying we know you're dealing with a family issue right now. National news picked up what's going on with your family, with your husband having stage 4 cancer. So very sorry to hear that. What can you tell us about what's going on right now?
Yeah, I certainly did not mean to make a federal case of it. It was kind of a situation where I didn't want anybody to think I was not taking it seriously, and I think some people found out about it, and so I just wanted to get ahead of the message and make sure that people understood that this took us by surprise, and we are going to fight it. So I just walked around the ward with my husband 4 times and was so happy that he's up, and this is the first step in a long journey of, I guess, what we would call cancer culture.
Wow, good one. Yes,
I made that up.
good.
Probably been done before, but
I had never heard that.
I
So
do feel like I've sort of landed in cancer
yes.
culture, weirdly. So, but it's all about love. So,
Well, I'm glad to hear he's up and at 'em, and please keep us posted on that. And obviously, that has to be tough to be dealing with that, and also be running the race that you're running. Let's talk a little bit about your race. Obviously, it's the 5th district, and the main thing I just want to get to is, people need to check what district they're in, because as we just saw yesterday, there are some shenanigans going on in your district and Odessa's district and Randall Cooper's district, where folks have found out that they may be getting the wrong ballots when they go to vote. What do you know about that? What have you heard from the Secretary of State's office? And, what can people do to just prepare?
I mean, disconcertingly, I've heard different numbers from a lot of people. The Secretary of State told me 133 people in my district, but I've heard a range from 44 to 1,000. It's the differential in those numbers is alarming in and of itself. And it puts us in a horrible position, of course, because we don't know what the extent of it is. We're in the middle of an election. We certainly don't want people to not vote because they don't think that the elections are safe. So it's been pretty complicated quandary, but what it does tell us is something we already know, which is that our democracy is in trouble right now. And I cannot emphasize enough to anybody out there who needs to hear this that you need to go vote if you have not voted, because democracy itself is on the line this cycle. And I can assure you that our Republican opponents in all of these races in Middle Tennessee are supporters of the big lie and do not have any interest in supporting your personal freedoms.
Right. It's always tough when it comes to these things because, screwing them up shakes people's confidence in them, which in turn, leads to less and less faith in them. So it's almost like they get an A on the test for failing.
No.
And, that's why I call Trey Hargett the Secretary of Voter Suppression. And, we've been at the bottom in voter turnout for so long that you would think somebody might be like, hey, we should replace this guy. He's not fixing it. But the truth is, that's what he was sent there to do. And
Right.
there's a lot of finger pointing going on about whose fault this is. Was it Davidson County? Was it the Secretary of State? All roads lead to Trey Hargett in the Secretary of State's office, and Republicans, because they're in control of the state, control elections even in blue areas. So, and you can also go back to the way they gerrymandered the districts and drew lines through precincts and created confusion that way. It all adds up to a mess created by a Republican supermajority that wants to undermine faith in democracy and frankly doesn't really even believe in democracy. You just pointed out that we have election deniers running all across the state. Like, this is the core tenet of their platform, is basically fascism. Is it going too far to say that?
No, it is not going too far. And, we have actually been downgraded in our country on international indices from a backsliding democracy to an anocracy. And that's exactly what an anocracy is. It is a democracy that has elements of fascism starting to enter into it. So you are absolutely right. I think that the awareness across this state and this country of the degree to which we are facing a downfall of our democracy is really, really variable. And I don't think there are enough people that understand the extremity of the situation that we're facing. And all you have to look at is the activist Supreme Court that we've got in place right now to realize that the plan is to make sure that that elections are no longer relevant.
It just seems like when we talk about this, people write it off as we're being alarmist.
I know.
And it's like, what more do you need to see? You've had an attack on the Capitol. Look at Brazil, what's going on there right now, where, Bolsonaro lost and won't concede. And you've got Bannon telling him he can't concede. And, Trump is obviously a buddy of his down there. And you've got entire towns getting together outside military buildings and flashing Sieg Heils and Nazi salutes. Like, we are in a very dark place globally right now, and it is happening here in Tennessee and here in this country.
You can bring it down to the state level by looking at what's going on with our public schools right now. Hillsdale and the I call it just evangelical hedge fund schools. The plan to privatize our entire public education and indoctrinate our children at the same time, which is the antithesis of educating them. Is a huge part of that. And anybody who's ever spent time in an autocratic country knows that those are sort of the checklist points. You make sure that you're indoctrinating people. You take away women are the first on the chopping block. And, for people out there who think that was a one-off, they need to understand that Clarence Thomas made it very clear to us that there was a whole deep bench of stuff behind that. I mean, we have gay marriage on the chopping block next. My opponent, Andy Ogles, has said he wants to go after gay marriage next. So, I'm sure inevitably we'll be going after contraception, and God help Clarence Thomas if we go after mixed marriages. It's just, this is what happens when democracies fall. And I think we're all we've lived for the most part lives where we could go to Costco if we needed to, even in the pandemic, as hard as it was, basically our lives were not upheaved too much. And I think people have a sense of complacency because of that. Yeah, there's Andy Ogles. He's an insouciant frat boy. And by the way, for those of your listeners who don't know, Ted Cruz just came down here and did a big event for him.
Which I'm going to ask you about in a minute. But let's just watch extreme Andy Ogles for a minute here.
Okay.
This administration is a criminal enterprise that's destroying our nation, and they have an agenda.
I should be clear. He's talking about Biden, not Trump, because he'd be right if he was talking about Trump. But he's talking about Joe Biden here.
But not only are they trying to poison our children, it's about the agenda. Think about the word with C.S. Lewis. It's about democracy. They can destroy the family. They can poison our children. They can steal our Constitution. They take us closer and closer to socialism, which is what they want. Well, I've had enough. Yeah. This administration, Biden and Pelosi and Kamala, Mayorkas, they're guilty. They need to be impeached and run out of office.
So, like, you know,
This administration.
I play that, and if you're surprised to hear that, you shouldn't be, especially if you're following, you know, Heidi or the Holler. But you know, it's really him saying it is one thing. The cheer that it elicits from the audience, it's pretty shocking to hear that. You know, and the word salad of they're poisoning our children to steal our constitution, blah blah blah, socialism. Like it's just like a Mad Libs of Republican, you know, fear mongering and fever dreams. Like people need to know how extreme Andy Ogles is. That's the main point there. What do you think when you hear that?
I mean, the thing that's so amazing to me about watching all of these clips, but I felt this way about Trump too, is if you were able to somehow drop me into take me through a vacuum and drop me into that thing, and I had no idea who that guy was or what was going on at all, I would definitely watch that guy and say he's full of it. I mean, he's totally disingenuous. He's full of crap. There is no question. And it's interesting to me that so many people watch him. Everything about him, his cadence, his body language, he's full of it. And it's interesting to me that people watch that and find it compelling. But we've seen that, you know, there are a lot of people that are completely hooked into that kind of thing. But, you know, that language is not, people joke about it, but it's actually terrifying because of where it's leading. And at that event, you know, there were Proud Boys and those people that you're hearing cheering in the audience. My husband went to that event actually, and so did somebody from my staff. And my husband's response to being in that room was, and he's not, you know, a very emotive person usually, but he said it was just a room full of hate. It just felt.
I was there. He's not wrong. I mean, that's what it was. You know, the focus of the speeches, you know, Clay Travis spoke, Ted Cruz spoke, failed comedian Ted Cruz spoke, Andy Ogles spoke. You know, their focus was transphobia. Their focus was, you know, fear mongering about immigrants, fear mongering about inflation that they had no solutions for, which is a global issue. And, you know, it was really just a lot of hate and venom. And you come away thinking like anybody who thinks like all we need to do is sit down and have a conversation. It's hard, you know, and you've been trying to do that. So I guess I would ask, like, how has your experience been on the trail trying to talk? I'm sure you've come across people who were probably in that room. So, you know, what kind of conversations have you been having with people who aren't going to vote for you?
Well, I don't think anybody who thinks that needs to just sit down and have a conversation. Don't conflate my campaign message with that, because thank you for giving me the opportunity to clear that up, because what I'm really saying is that we're not going to get anywhere by feeding the divisiveness. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to have conversations with people who are so far gone, which is pretty much everybody in that room, that they're never going to come around. But what we do have is a huge number, and we know this because we've looked at the data, people in sort of the persuasion universe who are also not comfortable with the extremity of a lot of those views. And those people, if they feel like you are automatically writing them off and judging them and you know, stamping them with, you know, you're a bad person, are not going to listen to us. And we as Democrats have not done a great job of messaging. I mean, the truth of the matter is, from an economic perspective, we are so much better for this country. And you and I both know that, because so many reasons: the opportunity cost, getting rid of all the corporate fueled intermediary entities that are taking money from our taxpayers and making sure that taxpayers are actually not getting that money. All kinds of reasons that we are actually so much better economically, but yet we have allowed that message that we are not fiscally responsible, that socialism message, to get, you know, to take hold. And so my issue is, rather than saying screw you guys constantly, because I'm a mom and I know how these fights work. I mean, really, honestly, there's never going to be anything good coming out of continuing to bombastically, you know, fight with each other. And that's my point. My point is, we need to act like adults. And if people aren't going to listen to our adult message, then let's move on to people who will. And this campaign has worked really, really hard. I mean, it has been hard work. You know, making sure that we're on message with that, because not because we're trying to pull people in or that we wouldn't support. We are genuinely wanting to support everyone. And that's what they won't do.
So I think the distinction that you're making is, you're not saying like meet them halfway, but you are saying continue to talk to people in general, right?
I'm
Like,
saying
yeah,
I'm saying stop calling them. I mean, seriously, it's us.
sure.
The real enemy here are corporations that have conned a bunch of people into thinking that they're supporting people who will help them when they're really voting against their own self-interest. I mean, they are caught up in a grift, and so we need to make sure that we are being the opposite of that, that we're messaging the truth, which is that we want to represent all of the taxpayers in our state. And that is something people need to hear. Why would they vote for you if you were constantly just always, giving out negative messaging about a party that they belong to? I mean, this whole
Sure, I understand that. The challenge is like they're getting, they're hooked into Fox News and a right wing echo chamber constantly, and it's hard to counter that. And so, how much energy can you spend trying to, debunk the things that are being pumped into what they're saying? And I know you want to say don't say them, and I accept that, but it's a really difficult situation. And being in that room, you just see that so many of the things that we want to try to have a discussion about, it's not like these are just things that they take for granted at this point. Like, these are not things that they think are up for discussion anymore. Like, we are groomers that are trying to come
right.
and poison their children and turn all their kids gay and into trans.
It's all very meta, because it's a lot of what they're doing. Yeah, right.
Right. So it's just hard. And I guess my takeaway from that room is just, it was a general dread of where things are headed. And we do need to keep talking to each other and find the people that are willing to listen. But there doesn't seem to be too much of a willingness to listen in that room.
Right. Well, I'll concede that lately I have been I have been, not by desire, a little bit close to the healthcare industry, but it's kind of like triaging a patient. I mean,
right.
We are in an emergency situation, so we, all of the issues that we would like to talk about or counteracting, all of that negativity is something that we may be inclined to do, but in the final analysis, what we really need to do is save democracy so that we can actually pass the John Lewis Act, so that we can actually make it so people can vote.
Yes, and I think this is really important because there's a great book called The Laboratories of Autocracy, which I have not read, but I have had David Pepper on here as a guest. And so I feel I can talk about it a little bit. And I did sleep at a Holiday Inn. No, and what he talks about is that the way the incentives are lined up, because basically no state legislators have to even run elections anymore, other than maybe a primary here or there, that the incentives are for them to be more and more extreme, to draw the lines, to make them safer and safer, so they never really have to face voters. And that's where we are. And these state houses, as being a state senator, this is where the rubber meets the road for democracy a lot of the time. This is where congressional districts get drawn. This is where state districts get drawn. So people are so focused on national races, federal races, presidency, they don't look at these state races that are being run. And we are really far from a representative democracy already at this point. It's kind of hard to see how we come back from that until people start actually focusing where the focus needs to be, which Republicans have been doing for a really long time.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, they've been working on this for 50 years. The Southern strategy didn't happen overnight. And, in 2008, we were a Democratic state. So, you have to keep that in mind.
Right.
But democracy is hard work. And I think a lot of people I think a lot of people do this, both sides are bad thing, and the whole thing is a mess. And, what I would say to them is, they're already in a state where a trigger ban's been passed. And that has affected us in ways that people don't even realize yet. And I know that there are doctors that are leaving our state because they don't want to work here because of that. And that will start to impact all of us personally in so many ways. There are so many external costs, externalities to that. But
right. And the thing that I would encourage for anybody watching or knows people that are doing that is like, when you make that decision to leave or to not come, which I think we're getting scratched off a lot of lists, like, be vocal about that. Let people know that Tennessee is not on your list anymore, so that we understand what impact it's having, when conventions cancel, or actually one that I know of that was born here and has been here in Nashville for 5 years is leaving. Like, I'm encouraging them, like, be vocal about that. People need to know about those decisions that you're making and the costs that these things are having on our society and our state. I think it's really important. And then you talked about, the both sidesing of it. And, that's something that I give this guy Gapper some grief for, who, he comes and watches, doesn't agree with me about a lot of things. But, we talk about the Fox News effect on the right. And he's like, well, the same thing is going on for people that watch MSNBC and CNN. I get so frustrated with that. It's because, yes, there are people who watch MSNBC and CNN, but the difference is one station deals in facts and one station does not. And yes, there's a slant, there's a slant to the holler, but we don't lie. Right. And, Fox News peddles bullshit on a regular basis. So, I think we really need to talk directly to people who try to both sides everything and say, you are running cover for a group of people that is really up to no good when you do that.
Well, and when I have those conversations with people, I tend to find that they're inured to that they don't care about whether or not the information's factual or not. And so, I mean, that's definitely just a difference we have, because I cannot imagine how we can possibly have any government, any society where we don't at least agree fundamentally on what truth is.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking about, things that I'm talking about actual facts.
Right. And that's been the goal, is to assault facts and truth, make it feel like they don't exist. That's how you slip into a dictatorship and autocracy and fascism. And that's been the goal since the minute that orange man came down that golden escalator. So both sides think they own the truth. Yeah, but if you can't see the difference, Gapper, then that's on you at this point, my friend, and I'll deal with you later. But thank you for watching. Before I let you make your closing argument here to people, encourage them to go vote. And obviously, the election is coming on Tuesday, so I hope you voted already. If you haven't, please go do that. I just want to, since he has refused to debate you, and you have wanted to since the beginning, there's one clip that I wanted to play. This was after the rally that I went to, and he was there at this bus. I slipped into kind of the press group that got to ask him and Cancun Cruz some questions. Okay. And, the main question we all had was, why won't he debate you? And he gave some answer about the Epic Times that I didn't make any sense of. But he was asked, do you support a national abortion ban? And this was his slippery, slimy answer.
Your opponent has said that you support a national abortion ban. Is that true?
Well, the Supreme Court has spoken on that issue, and it's referred back to the states. And what people are talking about across the country are immigration, crime, and this runaway economy that is headed towards a recession.
But if elected and a proposal came across, would you vote in favor of it?
Like I said, the Supreme Court's spoken on that issue.
It's not a yes or no. That's going to be an issue that is decided state by state, and every state is going to adopt different laws.
Not a yes or no. Didn't really answer it. Heidi, let's say that was his debate answer. How would you respond?
Well, it's very clear that Andy Ogles is actually wanting to take away women's reproductive rights, even in cases of rape or incest, because somebody asked him specifically that question, and he said he thought it was a red herring. So I think that's very sad for his daughters. I think that's very sad for all of our daughters, because we know inevitably that this isn't really about supporting life. It's about oppressing or suppressing women. And it's misogynist.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I completely agree with that. And, having stood there and asked him a couple questions, I could sort of see why he won't debate you, because he had to have Big Daddy Ted Cruz step in for him on multiple occasions. And I don't think he would comport himself that well on a stage with someone like yourself. So, he may be ultimately doing himself a favor by running or hiding, but I think everybody should debate. I think he's chicken shit for not doing it, just like Governor Lee and Mark Green and Tim Burchett and everybody else. And for the people that are going to jump in and say, well, Katie Hobbs isn't doing it in Arizona, you're right, she should. So, I think everybody should debate. I think the people lose when they don't.
Right.
So I know you have a campaign to get back to. Just as a kind of final thought here, what would you like to say to people kind of as we head towards Tuesday?
Our Republican colleagues always say it matters who leads, and they're right. It matters who leads. And I can just tell you that the guy that I'm running against wants to eliminate completely Social Security, wants to eliminate the Department of Education. He said after he got elected in the primary, the first words out of his mouth is, "We are at war. We are a white Christian nation." And I know that that the people in all of District 5 would be absolutely appalled if they knew what the plan was if Andy Ogles gets elected. And it could not be more important for people to get out and vote. We don't have people early voting. And to you 18 to 24-year-olds out there, you guys need to go vote. You could wake up in Gilead on Wednesday, and that's an incredibly extreme thing to say, but I am just telling you it's true. You need to get up and you need to go vote. It matters. So please get yourself. Today is last day of early voting. Get yourself to the polls today, or make sure if you missed that to go on Tuesday.
Senator Campbell, good luck to you. All the best to your family and your husband. And thank you for joining us here. And we'll see you on the other side.
Love your show. Thank you.
Heidi. Take care. So that's Senator Heidi Campbell running in my district, the 5th district, against a extreme dude named Andy Ogles, who, here's a couple of Andy's greatest hits. Racist meme he posted about the leader of North Korea using, anti-Asian, I guess jokey language there. My wife is half Chinese. I take great exception to that. Celebrating the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg right when she died, calling the pandemic fake as tens of thousands of Tennesseans and millions of people died. And then, of course, there's that Christmas card with his kids with a bunch of guns. I think you can see who this guy is. Wants to impeach Biden. He's a very extreme guy. And that's why he hasn't been willing to debate Senator Campbell. Wanted to stay off the stage. Believes that he can just slither through based on the strength of the letter next to his name. And I think that's an insult to Tennesseans. I think it's an insult to voters in general. It's an insult to Republicans, frankly. And it shows how little he thinks of himself. When they think, oh, I'm going to get on a stage and make a fool of myself and cost myself the election, like, what does that say about how you think about yourself? So, I think it's chicken shit not to do that. Governor Lee, same thing. Tim Burchett, same thing. Mark Green, Dan Harshbarger, John Rose, Desjardins, Kustoff, down the list. We've seen debates in Florida with DeSantis, Texas, Abbott, Oz, Herschel Walker. I mean, they've all debated, and we haven't had one here in Tennessee. So we have a special kind of, I'm going to keep saying it, chicken shit, cowardly, anti-democracy group of Republicans here in Tennessee. They are election deniers. And, my buddy Gapper, who I'm going to go back to here, yes, he says we are a Christian nation. Andy Ogles definitely believes that. And, no one should deny the public election debate. I agree with you. But just to go back to this whole both sides thing, like you say both sides think they each own the truth. And I don't think anybody is saying that, CNN doesn't get things wrong or MSNBC doesn't get things wrong, and I also don't even think both sides are saying that, Republicans have a monopoly on political violence. But look at the reactions when they happen. That's what I would point to. Look at the reaction to political violence from the right, making fun of Paul Pelosi, peddling disinformation at the top. I mean, Trump, doing this and his son doing this. Like, you don't get that on the left. You don't have Biden making up, some bullshit about what happened to Scalise or Obama, that kind of thing. And, generally speaking, I find when Democrats get called out, they're willing to say I was wrong. We don't see that very much on the right. And, nobody's perfect. No party's perfect. I agree with you that there are plenty of things about Democrats that I didn't even support Biden in the primary. So there are things that I would change, but we're in a place right now where one party has fundamentally jumped off a cliff into, a form of theocratic, fascist, anti-democracy, cult-like behavior. And to say, oh, well, both sides do it, you're just excusing it. And, you're helping run cover for it. And they just attacked the Capitol or incited an attack on the Capitol. They are running for office all throughout this country for Secretary of State positions, governorships, election administrators. They are coming to make us into a country where they only accept the results they like. And too many people have fought and died to protect the right to elect our representatives in this country, for us just to accept that and write it off as, oh, both sides do it, for me to just swallow what you're saying there. And I think it's really important to have this conversation because, frankly, the people that were in the room at that Andy Ogles rally, I don't think I can reach in the next 5 days. But the people that are willing to jump on this show and have this conversation and, play the middle, I think I can maybe have a conversation with you and convince you that, it isn't both sides equally. It's not. And I need you to hear that and understand it. And I'm not just talking to you, Gapper, because the reason I'm having this conversation is because I don't only have this conversation with you. I have it with my family members, my friends, with people that follow us on Twitter, in our inboxes. I'm using you as kind of a, not a guinea pig, but the symbol of that conversation, because it's one that I have often. And I really need you to hear that in the next 5 days here. I don't know who you voted for. I don't know if you vote. I hope you do vote. But I just think it's important to point out that, yes, both sides are flawed, but not equally. Not equally. Not in this moment. There may come a day where things flip and, we need to hold Democrats to that account. And they're the ones in the supermajority here that are, running roughshod over democracy in Tennessee. But we are a theocracy in Tennessee already, right now. This has happened. And you have a bunch of people who are no longer responsive to people. And they are arrogant about it. And they are laughing at the voters of Tennessee when they don't debate, when they hide from people, and when they rob us of the ability to even just hear what they have to say. And I hope, if nothing else, that pisses you off enough to make you vote against them. I don't want to live in a theocracy either, Chelsea, but I've been paying pretty close attention to this state for 4 years now, as close attention as anybody I would offer. I don't think anybody has watched more committees or floor sessions or, been up there as much, other than people who are actually on the committees, representatives, but I'll put my amount of ingestion of this stuff up with anybody's at this point. And here's the thing about it. Just ask them. Ask them, why are you here to serve? They will tell you why they're there. They're there to serve Jesus. They're there because they think it's a Christian. Ask them. Ask Jason Zachary why he's up there. Ask Mark Green what he's doing. They will tell you. They are open about it. And that's where we are. And they need to be held accountable because it has real impact. How does it have real impact? For example, Mark Green stood in a Brentwood church a few years back and said that he opposes government programs because suffering brings people closer to God, helps people know God. And he doesn't want people turning to the government because it keeps people from God. That's a extremist, zealot thing to say. And he led the fight to block Medicaid expansion in Tennessee, which kept 300,000 people without coverage. And we are at the bottom in medical bankruptcies, poverty, infant and maternal mortality because of that. because of this man's zealotry. And these are the people who control our state. So I am not speaking hypothetically. I'm not being alarmist. I'm telling you the truth. You follow us, you're here. You have to know that by now. And we support it with video, with links, with evidence, with facts every single day, constantly. So if you don't hear it yet, it's because you don't want to. And I hope we're making sense to somebody out there. And I hope that you'll get out and vote. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.